Okay, so Ellin Bessner, who will be our moderator this evening, and a far more benign presence than me, is a Canadian journalist based in Toronto. She's the author of a book about Canada's 17,000 Jewish servicemen and women who fought in the Second World War. The book is called Double Threat: Canadian Jews, the Military, and World War II, and she's, in the spirit of self-promotion, showing you the book right now. I can see from my peripheral vision.
He told me to do that. He literally said, bring your books, which I'm so grateful.
Which is published by U of T Press. And then I will just jump ahead to say that Ellin was born in Montreal, graduated with a degree in journalism and political science from Carleton University, and her career as a journalist has taken her around Canada and the world. She's worked for CTV News, CBC News, and strung for the Globe Mail, Canadian Press, and other organizations. She was a business anchor for many years at
Just skip it. Just go.
Report on Business Television, now BNN. And the last thing I want to say is that I believe she has two sons, and one of them's in the audience tonight. So.
He is.
Now,
He's a U of T student.
yes, exactly.
There you go.
Yeah, doctoral student, as we both said, very smart. Now I'm going to try to do this from memory. I'm not sure how well this is going to go. But the way I framed this was, rather than giving you a standard potted bio, I'm going to do something interactive. I'm going to ask you a few, what to me were less known facts about Bobby. And if you know the answer, just put up your hand. And I was going to say, a la Donald Trump, I'll just project a T-shirt to you. But I'll actually probably try to get it to you in a somewhat more, let's say, decorous way. So let me start now with, so you all know that Bobby is a practicing criminal lawyer. But do you know what decade he began practicing law? So if you know the answer, put up your hand. If you already have a T-shirt, don't put up your hand, because you're just going to get another T-shirt. Okay, yes? I'm afraid you don't get a T-shirt. You have a T-shirt. Who doesn't have a T-shirt? Oh, no, wait. There's somebody with a... Sorry? 80s, no. I didn't think it would take this long. 90s, yes. Here you go.
Okay, so the T-shirts have a QR code on the bottom, and if you put your phone to the QR code, you get to the website.
He can't just let this proceed. There has to be a self-promotion embedded in... Okay, so we'll now go to another one. And you may not know this, but Bobby edited a magazine in Paris before he became a lawyer. Stop. And I'm not even looking at you. And this was called... Anyone? Yes, right there. Passion, correct.
And the publisher and editor is right here,
right
Robert
here.
Sarner. Please stand up. Thanks to Robert, I became a writer.
Okay. This is a gimme. Robert's first novel went unpublished, but since then, starting with Old City Hall, we have had a number of novels. Counting tonight's, how many are there? 7, correct. Now, here's the... I think I had one more, but I've forgotten what it is, so we'll just go to the last one. But I have 5 T-shirts, so I got to think of what that other one was. No. You want to give me one? Give me one.
When's Bobby never really ready?
You'll never get it.
Where did I go to high school?
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah.
What 2 high schools?
Oh, okay. Ooh, the tough one. Well, let's be kind to the audience. Name one of 2 high schools that Bobby went to. Yes.
That's right.
Bathurst Heights.
You need one of those cannons like they have at the, T-shirt cannons. I think U of T would spring for one, right?
Okay, last question. This is my favorite. So when Bobby's last novel was published, we were in COVID, so Innis did host the launch, but it was virtual. What former mayor read from Downfall during that launch? Yes? John Tory. And I didn't even say disgraced former mayor.
Mm-hmm.
So He can never say I don't love him because I went to the effort to, and committed to memory, right? Which is not too bad. So now the main attraction and the reason you're all here is to hear Ellin and Bobby talk about this latest novel. And I can't wait to witness what they have to say. So take it away.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Charlie.
Welcome, everybody. Before we get started, we have a little presentation about the book.
Yes, we do. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Innis College and the official launch of Bobby Rotenberg's What We Buried. Thank you to Innis College for hosting this wonderful event, to Ben McNally Books for providing copies for sale, and to all of you for coming out to celebrate this publication on what is truly a wretched evening in February. What is it they say? February showers bring March and April showers? My name is Adrienne Kerr, and I'm a senior editor at Simon & Schuster Canada. It has been my great pleasure to work with Bobby on this book, his latest airy green novel. The brilliant Laurie Grassi is his editor. The talented Paul Barker is his book designer. The tireless Lisa Ray is his publicist. And the superlative Michael Levine is his agent. I'm merely his official in-house champion and cheerleader. Bobby needs no introduction. He's the author of several best-selling novels, including Old City Hall, The Guilty Plea, and Downfall. He's been called Canada's John Grisham, and his praises have been sung by the likes of Kathy Reichs and Ian Rankin, Jeffrey Deaver and Nelson DeMille, and Eddie Greenspan and F. Lee Bailey. Inspired by the true story of the 40 martyrs in Gubbio, Italy during World War II, his new novel, What We Buried, is a crime novel about troubled legacies, revenge, and the unbreakable bonds of family. On June 20th, 1944, Italian partisans killed a German lieutenant at the Café Nafisi in central Gubbio. That was all well and good, but the Germans had threatened strict reprisals for any attacks on their troops. They promised to kill 40 citizens for every officer harmed and 20 for every soldier. Later that day, the Nazis randomly selected 40 citizens during the supper hour, including women and children, dragged them from their homes, and executed them in front of their families. Bobby deftly weaves this history into a compelling present-day investigation in Toronto, slowly uncovering the consequences of these events decades later, casting Detective Ari Green as a would-be Nazi hunter. Much of this past storyline is inspired by Bobby's own interviews with British war veterans, Holocaust survivors, and historians. Please join me in congratulating Bobby on this important new publication.
We produced a short video, and I think we're going to play that first.
Yes, first. It's about 5 minutes.
In the year 2000, when my now 24-year-old daughter was a baby, we went to Italy for a few weeks. One day we ended up in Gubbio, a perfectly preserved, rather remote medieval hill town in Umbria. That afternoon, we watched the 500-year-old crossbow contest held in one of the most magnificent squares in all of Europe, complete with flag wavers, trumpeters, and costume competitors. We loved it. And after, we walked through the town's narrow streets, packed with families serving wonderful Italian food late into the night. At that point, I had not even started writing my novels, but I knew in my heart that one day I had to include this spectacle in a book. When I began my first book, Old City Hall, I gave one of my main characters, Daniel Kennicott, a backstory that I knew would lead him back to Gubbio. Here's the book, and right out at the beginning, page 9, this is what I wrote as his backstory. It had been 3.5 years since Daniel Kennicott had joined the police force, turning his back on what had been a promising career as a young lawyer in one of the city's top firms. The reason? His older brother Michael had been murdered 12 months before. When the investigation seemed to be going nowhere, he traded in his legal robes for a badge. For years, and 6 novels, my readers have been writing me letters such as these 2. I've loved your books. I see you have another release, and I hope you keep them coming. I hopefully assume there's a plan to follow up on the murder of Daniel's brother and his parents' car accident at some point. Anyway, good job. Here's another one. Firstly, we love your books and have read every one. We sit on pins and needles awaiting the next one. Secondly, don't ever stop writing. We love Ari. Not too happy about Jennifer being murdered. We hope soon we will find out what happened to Kennicott's brother. And for years, in the books, Daniel kept putting off dealing with his brother Michael's murder. Why? Well, I'm to blame. How could Daniel figure out what happened to his brother until I did? I'll confess, I knew it was a powerful story, but I had no idea what the answer was. That's why it took me 3 years to write my new novel. This is it, What We Buried. Along the way, I discovered the tragic key to the mystery. In June 1944, when Germany occupied Italy, and one afternoon Italian partisans killed a Nazi officer and injured another. As revenge, Hitler demanded the murder of 40 innocent civilians. This horror became the spine of the novel. As I was completing the manuscript, I knew I had to go back to Gubbio. Here are some of the photos I took of the Gubbio Crossbow Museum, the current crossbow champion, the compelling shrine to the 40 martyrs, and most remarkable of all, a 94-year-old priest who, at horrible risk to himself, because the Nazis didn't just murder priests who assisted Jews, they tortured them to death, hid a Jewish family from Florence in his monastery. There's more to this novel. What about the suspicious car accident that killed Kennicott's parents 2 years before his brother's murder? At last, Detective Ari Green heads back up north to investigate. And there's a third story. I'm not the child of Holocaust survivors, but as readers of my novels will know, my main character, Ari Green, is. So are many of my closest friends. For years, I've talked to their survivor parents and collected their stories. To research this novel, I read every book I could get my hands on about Italy during and after the war. Like many Holocaust survivors, Ari's father, Yitzhak, a favorite of many of my readers, has never told anyone about what he did after the war. At last, in this novel, he sits down with his beloved granddaughter, the young journalist Allison Green, and she videotapes his story. Pulling these 3 disparate stories together, bringing back characters from earlier books, and creating a host of new ones made this the most difficult book to write of any of my novels, and the most rewarding. I'm glad I took up the challenge. I hope you enjoy my new book, What We Buried.
Nicely done. Wait till the lights come up. So I've had the privilege of you allowing me to read an advanced reader's copy because we have many connections in common. My first honeymoon was in Gubbio. I wrote this book about the Italian campaign and the Canadians who served in the Second World War. I speak fluent Italian. I caught some really bad typos in your index.
Thank God.
Really bad about the martyrs' names that were all gremlins. I don't know how those names came up. There was like AI put their names in. Oh my God, that would have been horrible. But I really wanted to ask you, this year is the 80th anniversary, June the 20th, 1944, 2024. So it's like a rip from the headlines anniversary. Was this a plan that it was going to come out just this year? Because you waited enough time, but why did you do this on purpose?
No, actually what I said in the video is absolutely true, is I created this idea because I just love the idea of opening a book, which this book opens with the crossbow contest. and I had no idea. I mean, we were at Gubbio years ago. I didn't even know about the massacre. And I was kind of like Daniel, I kind of kept putting it off. And I knew I had to answer the question. And when I started researching and I found out about the massacre, it was just so compelling that I knew somehow. But now I'm determined to go back there because my agent, Michael Levine's going to sell my books in Italy, and I'm going to go back there in June, right? Yeah.
Tanti auguri, as
Yeah.
they say. But another story that is ripped from the headlines now is something relevant that many of you will remember. In the fall, the Canadian government in Parliament gave a standing ovation to an SS Ukrainian Nazi soldier who then came to Canada legally, and now the government gave him a standing ovation until they found out, oh, there's Nazi war criminals here? Really? We didn't know. And then you all remember the story, which was an incredible, I mean, it was before October 7th, so at the time it was the biggest story of the year. Do you feel that it's worth it, even all these years later, to tell these stories and find out and unearth the real Nazi war criminals as opposed to the fictional one in your book?
Well, I think what I found so exciting about writing this book is my first 6 books were about Toronto, like a fictional Toronto, but about what was really happening in the city. Downfall was about homelessness. Stray Bullets was about the rise of gun violence. So I had a book called Stranglehold about a crazy mayor, and 10 days later, Ford went crazy. So I've always tried to look ahead, but in this book, writing about putting my fictional characters into real history, it's a real stretch for me, and I love doing it, and it's actually where I want to take my writing, because I think it just adds so much depth and meaning. And what was very interesting when I went to Italy is, because I spoke to a lot of people in Gubbio, and it's like everything, there's a lot of gray, because at first you think it's great that these the partisans killed a Nazi and injured another one, but then you realize the town is kind of divided, because half the people are thinking, well, the Germans were going to be gone soon, and we lost 40 of our people. So there's always, it's never quite black and white, and that's where, I think that's where novelists live. That's where in the conflict and the interest. So I'm not really answering your question.
No, I was going to say, but back to my question.
Yeah.
How important is it, even if it's in a historical fiction novel, but even so, for a country this far away from the war to have a reckoning with its actual past of letting in people like the grandfather? Spoiler alert.
And I don't want to spoil the book, but you
Yeah.
can see that that's
I just did.
the
Okay.
crucial part of
Yeah.
a real part of the book, which I'm going to kind of leave it at that. And I think it's important. And what's interesting about books and stories about World War II, which, as my great friend Robert Sarner said, once you get into it, it's endless, especially the Holocaust. But it's almost like there's a tertiary interest. I mean, at first people were interested in D-Day and the battles and the Holocaust, but now people are almost interested in like the day-to-day and what actually was life like then and now. So it's like all history. If we don't face it, we're condemned to relive it.
Speaking of what you just mentioned, though, in Italy, where many of you may not know, yes, Mussolini enforced the racial laws, as you learned, but you said that the clergy and many other ordinary Italians hid the Jews. They protected the Jews. Yes, there were several thousand who were deported from Rome and elsewhere. They even have a crematorium and a death camp in Italy, in Trieste, which I've been to. But the actual legacy of what the Italians did for the Jews hasn't really been told. And I wonder how moving that was for you to discover this.
Well, to meet this priest was one of the most extraordinary things. And
He's still alive?
Last
far
I
as you know.
heard.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what's interesting. I wanted a guide to take me around Gubbio, and every guide just wanted to show me all the history from 300-400 years. It's fascinating history. So we found this guide, and I told her what I wanted to do, and lovely young woman. She said, well, we don't do that. And then the next day she came and she said, oh my God, this is amazing. And she found the priest, and it was like I watched her rediscover her history, which was wonderful. She thanked me for it at the end. So I've heard just extraordinary stories of bravery of the Italians. Most people don't know, like I like to say to people, here's a quiz. When was Rome liberated? What day was Rome liberated? You know, but what else? Who else knows? Well, it's almost sad no one knows, because it was June the 4th, 1944. And how do we know that? Because June the 6th, 1944 was D-Day. And the soldiers who'd fought all the way up the Italian boot, including the Canadians, and you can see how I went to put the Canadians in the book, they had fought all through Africa, they'd fought all through the war, and they thought, like, what's this big deal? These men fought one battle. We fought the whole thing. So
Right, and only 350 were killed that day, whereas in the Italian campaign, 92,000 Canadians served, 6,000 lay buried in graves across Italy. It was a muddy, brutal war of attrition. Canadians won lots of Victoria Crosses for liberating Ortona. I've tried so hard, Bob, but I'm sure the Canadians were not in Gubbio. They were farther west. I was wishing, please, for real. I checked again last night. They were not.
No. But, well, I don't want to get too much into the book, but the great Canadian battle was in Ortona in Christmas of my son Peter, who knows a lot of history, is nodding, in 1943. Farley Mode was there. And so you'll see in the book, I found a way to give a character that story, and that was what's so exciting about writing this book, is using the history and real characters. Well, I guess they weren't real, but they were real to me.
Well, they are. You have to have, the names are changed, but I want to bring up, while you're mentioning it, you have a very special guest here with us tonight, who is a real Second World War veteran, upon which would you like to explain who you created one of your characters?
Well, this is one of the most special moments. And I'm going to cue whoever does the videos in a moment. It's very emotional. You know, I was thinking, Ellen, being a writer is like being a spy, because you hear things from people, and you just
told me to do that. I'm sorry.
You kind of put this together. And years ago, I met the family, Lavin family, and John and Kathleen Lavin. And they are war heroes. John Lavin flew, was it 96, Kathleen? Peter? 81 missions as a gunner in North Africa. The average lifespan was about 15 years. And Kathleen, who is here,
15 missions.
is 15 missions.
You said years.
Sorry, 15 missions, yeah. And Kathleen Lavin, who now, we lost John about 2 years ago, but he told me, I can still see him explaining how he had this extraordinary ability flying to be able to gun and to hit the opposing plane. So it's not really spoiling things, but I gave Kennecott's grandparents John and Kathleen Lavin. Now, Kathleen, we are blessed to have her here. And maybe what I should do is show you the video. Is the video person here? Can we do that? Just one sec, Kathleen. Okay.
Should I give her a mic?
No, in a sec. I think this will explain a lot. We've just driven up to Kathleen Lavin's house. This is a very, very special moment for me. This is the very first copy of the book that I've received that I'm going to give to Kathleen. And she's a really extraordinary person. And although in my books, most of my books are fiction, in this book, I actually created characters based on a few real people. And one of them is Kathleen. Hello.
Hi, Robert. How are you?
Hi, Peter. How are you?
Good.
Have we met, Peter?
A long time ago. Yes.
Yeah. Great to see you. This is Devin.
You did that.
Where's the beautiful lady?
Ah, she's right here.
There's my girlfriend. Hi, gorgeous. This is a very special moment for me.
Okay.
Yes.
My girlfriend. This is the new book.
Oh, good.
And this is my very, very first copy that I've received.
Oh, the first one.
This is the very first time I've seen the book whole like this. Okay? So this is a present for you.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, you helped me so much talking about the Morse code, right?
Yes, it came to life again.
It did. It was amazing. You did the whole alphabet.
Da 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 da. I go through it.
Except you forgot the F, remember?
The F and the L always.
They're really tough, right?
Yes, they've got the same dits and dars in.
Right.
That's.
Here's a quiz for you. Do you think the book is called What We Buried?
I tried to think what we could have buried.
Well, what we could have buried. You want me to change the title? It's a bit too late. But do you think there's any way you could do this title in Morse code? Take your time.
Da 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 da. I'm going to go blank in a minute.
Okay.
Da 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 da. That's it.
That's it?
Yes.
Beautiful.
Do we have the lights up? Did you want to get her to stand, Bruno?
So Kathleen, congratulations. So
Big
so
round
you
of
know-
applause. Kathleen, everybody.
Now, Kathleen had her hair done today. So Kathleen was a spy, and she was a Morse code spy. And what she did, she spent the war up on the moors. The Nazis didn't know that the British were doing that. And as she taught me, when someone was doing Morse code, it was like a fingerprint. And she followed one officer all through the war. And her children didn't even know about this for years and years and years. And when we started talking, then her children found out. So another round of applause for Kathleen. She's only.
Amazing. There is a book, actually, I just read about, and it's about 12 British girls with the SOE who were dropped into France. I think it's called the Rose Girls or something. Yes, something? The Rose Code, and it's a great book. You should read about them. I hear an alarm, so I don't know whether we have 5 more minutes, but I do want to talk to you. You alluded earlier to your next project. People still have to read this one, but you're already working, as authors do, on the next one. Right. Can you, without telling too much, and your agent killing me, talk to me about why you want to explore more Holocaust themes, and specifically where this one is going to be?
Well, that's actually a whole idea for another series. It's not quite confirmed yet.
Okay, so we won't talk about that.
Yeah, but it's what's fascinating is the whole history of what happened after the war. I think I'll just leave it at that. And I'm really fascinated. There was a period, Germany wasn't a country for 3 years, and there were 1 million displaced people. There were 250,000 Jewish displaced people. And I want to say something special, which is many of my friends who are here, unlike me, they're children of Holocaust survivors. And when I said it's like a spy, I had the real honor to talk to a lot of their parents, including my friend Ron Davis's mother. And so to be able to use actual things that they told me and stories in the book is a real honor, a real honor.
I want to ask you one more thing that the audience may want to Google when they get home. If you read Italian or English, it's in some British papers. But many, many years after the war, the Italians who were, the atrocities that was committed by the Germans to your people in Gubbio, but also to the 200-some, including Jews of Rome, it's called the Fosse Ardeatine, which they were taken out and shot in reprisal for the same kind of action against the SS in the streets of Rome. If any have been to Rome and you've been on a Jewish tour, they do take you there. and there's many, many more of these. Gubbio wasn't alone.
No.
There was 700 killed in the mountains, and there's a movement. Can you just tell us what's going on with compensation now, not from Germany anymore, because they're done paying, but from Italy?
Yeah, one of the frustrations when you research this is that there was never any of the German soldiers who were involved in this were ever deported to Italy. And much of the frustration of people, and in fact, part of the research I did, I must have watched 50 YouTube videos, and at one point I stumbled on a video of the grandson of one of the German soldiers who'd been part of the massacre came to Gubbio, and which has been a real theme. A lot of young Germans are trying to do that. And he came to Gubbio, and there were 2 survivors, young children who saw their parents dragged out of their homes. And one of them met him, and eventually they shook hands. And the woman just said she couldn't meet him. And you can see that's reflected in the book. So the scars are very, very deep. And so it was very exciting to suddenly see this headline that at last the Italian government was starting to you emailed me, you said, hey, how did you know this was going to happen?
Well, the sad thing is that there were 22,000 victims of Nazi atrocities in Italy, including 8,000 Jews. The government is now cutting off the compensation fund. As of last June, if you hadn't gotten it in already, you're done. They're done paying, it's move on. And so they've only gotten 1,280 claims in, and there's only 61 million euros. It's not a lot. But we'll see what happens, whether it gets expanded. But the families are still hurting and still traumatized, even though it's 80 years. And I wonder, do you know what's going to happen in Gubbio this coming June? Is there some kind of bigger memorial plan because it's such a milestone?
I don't know, but what I do know is that every year in June, they told me this, the city shuts down and the school children go there. So we tend to think the past is the past, but as Faulkner said, the past is not the past. It's here with us all the time. So, and it was fascinating being able to kind of bring that and the Canadian story together. That's what I think made this such a joy to write this book, as painful as it was over 3 years.
Do we have time for a few questions? I know it says silent auction, but I'm sure some of you would like to ask a question.
Well,
yes?
Wait, before
No?
we get to silent
Okay.
auction, I want to do a fun thing.
Okay. He's gone rogue again. It's not on my list here. It's not on there.
Yeah, we can have a few questions, but is Mark Eagle here? Yeah, okay. Mark, I want you, when you look at the book, to look at page 21, because for the last book, I came up with the idea to raise some money for charity, to put someone's name in the book and at a price. So if you see that there's a charitable auction up there, that's what I want to raise some money for Innis College. So it's a silent auction, and whoever ponies up the most, your name will be one of the characters in the next book.
Don't be stingy.
So I don't have a mic, but if anybody would like one, we'll bring it to you if you would like to ask a question, and Robert will, or you can.
No, I'll run the mic, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
So just,
Any questions, comments?
well, this isn't going very well.
No.
There we go, there we go.
Okay.
I'm just interested in knowing writing process. How different is it through COVID? How different is it when it's set in Gubbio as opposed to Toronto? Because so much of your writing has been so rooted in this city and a great depth of knowledge of the city. And I'm just interested in knowing when you're isolated at home or traveling in Italy, how does that change the process of telling a story that emerges out of that?
Well, this is the first book that wasn't really just about Toronto. And it's also not a courtroom drama, although I managed to put a courtroom scene in a different kind of way. COVID was terrible and great. It was great because you didn't have to do anything, and nobody got arrested for months, so I had a lot of time to write. Yep. Yeah.
Just hold on.
In Old City Hall, in Old City Hall, which was the first one I read, this is rather frivolous after what we've been speaking about, but was that like a dream fulfillment that James Reimer and the Leafs could win the cup?
I get asked that question all the time. I'm old enough to remember 1967, and Darren Cladd is here, and he's going to have to suffer another 30 or 40 years without them winning the cup. So I thought at least I could write a book where they could hit the cup. I want to say a quick thank you.
I want to just say that, is anyone watching Law and Order Toronto? So they should do, he should be, yes, right? Because you saw that scene of them walking across the old City Hall in their pantsuits really fast, and you have it in yours too. So.
Sure we
What's
can
the
now-
question?
So the question is, aside from writing novels, Bobby's also written for television. What long-standing Canadian television show has Bobby written for? Murdoch Mysteries. So your T-shirt awaits.
Beautiful. All right.
Okay. So quickly, can I just speak for a minute?
Of course.
Okay. Yeah, maybe I'll come up here.
You don't need that.
Okay. Does this work? Because I tend to mumble, so.
This.
Okay.
That's the light.
Okay. Besides
He's a writer.
the perfunctory thank yous, and I don't want to do an Oscar-style thank you where you mention a bunch of names that no one knows, so I just want to thank Innis and everyone at Simon & Schuster, my agent, my law partners, my friends. I'm sorry, it's hard. And my family. I don't usually write things out, but I had to write this out. But there's one name that I'm going to say. It's my older brother, David. Sorry. My brother, David Rotenberg, died on November the 8th. He was Canada and probably North America's premier acting teacher and the author of 12 books. Yes, 12 books. I'm his younger brother, so I only have 7. You're supposed to laugh, okay? After he died, I took to saying that he was my inspiration, which although for me and countless students, upon reflection, that's true, but it seems trite. So I've thought about this a lot. I grew up in a family of readers, surrounded by books, and one of the most memorable moments I had with my brother was the evening when he took me outside and he showed me the mock cover of his first terrific book, The Shanghai Murders. There it was, a real book with David's name on it. That was his greatest gift to me. It said, this is not something that other people do. It's something that he could do. It's something that I could do. And I know that if David was here, he would say it wasn't about him, and it wasn't about me. I know he'd want to say to each one of you, and it doesn't matter if you're writing a book or becoming a judge or becoming a great salesperson or an engineer or a musical director. That's my way of saying too much about my kids, who I brag about too much. I know what he'd say to you is that it doesn't have to be the other, but it can be you. And I think that we can all thank him for that. So thank you very much for coming.
Just 2 things before you depart. The one is that you may not know this, but we do other things at the college in this venue aside from launch Bobby's books. So I just want to draw one event to your attention, should you be interested. On Sunday, March 3rd at 3 o'clock, we'll be screening a film called Nurse Fighter Boy. And for those of you who are not familiar with that film, it was the first feature film of a director named Charles Officer. And Charles died far too young, earlier this year. I'm going to get emotional. And so this is a tribute to him, and the panelists will be a range of people who worked with and were influenced by Charles, and it'll be hosted by Desmond Cole. So should you want to know more about this, just go on to the Innis College website and look under events, and you'll be able to register there for it, just as you did perhaps for this. So I want to just wrap this up by saying thank you so much to Ellin, and thank you to the infrastructure at Simon & Schuster, our own team that makes all these things happen so well, and of course to our guest of honor, Bobby Rotenberg.